and welcome to The Art and Science of AI, a podcast about the science of how AI works and the art of using AI to reimagine your life, business, and society. I'm Nikhil one of your co-hosts. I'm an AI product manager.
I'm Piyush, your other co-host. I'm an AI sales executive.
In this episode, we're going to talk about the evolution of digital marketing, specifically advertising, and the role that AI has played there. So we always talk about the fact that I'm an AI product manager and Piyush is an AI sales executive. But what's the product that we both work on? It's digital advertising. And this is an insanely complex product. It's not the kind of thing where you just go and buy it and use it. It requires incredibly complex implementation. And when you, as a sales executive, are going and selling this product to your customers, you have to guide them through exactly how to use this product. It's not a plug-and-play solution. And I know that you, in your long experience at Google, have worked with some of the most sophisticated customers and built some of the most sophisticated digital advertising programs. So in this episode, I want to hear from you about the evolution of digital marketing. Specifically, what role AI is playing in that, and what is the state of the art and the most sophisticated things people can do with AI today.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. So you're so right. Every episode we introduce ourselves as an AI product manager, AI sales executive. So I would love to talk about what that actually means. What do I do as an AI sales executive? So I've been at Google 8 years now, and I've spent almost the entirety of my Google career working with just one very sophisticated customer, and that customer is Airbnb.
Okay.
So I spent the last 6 years working on the digital marketing program that Airbnb built with Google Ads. So I was the Google Ads rep there. And I think what we ended up building is, quite frankly, one of the world's most sophisticated digital marketing program, if not literally the most sophisticated digital marketing program in the world.
And one of the most impactful.
One of the most impactful. Actually, here's an interesting story about the impact. So during the earnings call that happened earlier this year, in April 2024, I believe, Airbnb posted some stellar financial results. So their net income, or their profit, of their business went up by 122% year on year, which is remarkable, right? They doubled their profit year on year, especially in a business environment where profitability is so important, right? So the analysts were asking the questions, the CEO, Brian Chesky, who's also been in the news very lately, right? Founder mode, that thing is going viral. Paul Graham, who's the founder of Y Combinator, actually mentioned him by name. It's Brian Chesky runs Airbnb in founder mode, and I completely agree. And what I'm going to talk about today is kind of a testament to that. So anyways, in the earnings call, the CFO was asked, hey, that's amazing, 122% increase in profit. What's the secret sauce? And she congratulated the digital marketing, the performance marketing team, which is amazing, right? I'm very proud of the team that I worked with there.
You worked with.
Yeah. But it's what's the most interesting thing out of this is when the analyst asked her specifically what helped drive such amazing results, she talked about two very nuanced and jargony things from the world of digital marketing. She said, we focused on keyword expansion and we focused on audience expansion.
It's a lot of jargon.
It's a lot of jargon, but what's the interesting takeaway is that a CFO of a large $100 billion cap company is talking about marketing jargon when asked, how come you posted amazing financial results?
So obviously that drove a ton of impact for them, their digital marketing program.
Yeah. So so what they built is a very sophisticated program that is literally printing money for them. I think that's the true power of the transformation that Airbnb brought to.
What do you mean it's printing money?
So most people think of advertising as a cost. So actually, there's a very famous quote which is attributed to Ogilvy. He's the founder of Ogilvy and Mather. And I think that kind of encapsulates the problem of advertising in general. And he says that, I know that half of my advertising spend is wasteful. It's just that I don't know which half.
Okay.
And it's just a very good way of saying that we all know advertising works, but we don't know how much it works. And there's just so much confusion out there. The point is, advertising is traditionally seen as a cost, and what Airbnb was able to do is, for every dollar they invested into their advertising program, and they invested hundreds of millions of dollars, they were able to make sure that for every dollar invested, they got more than $1 back.
Okay.
Which is remarkable.
What you mean by money printing.
Money printing. They turned advertising from a cost center to a profit center. That is revolutionary, right? Like what they were doing is everything that they were investing into it, they were actually printing money.
And how did they do that?
So we'll talk about that, but just to understand what they did and what a very sophisticated digital marketing program looks like, I think the approach that I would like to take is the same approach you took when you wanted me to understand how ChatGPT worked. And the approach you took was you talked about
in
the
evolution. Yeah,
the last time we were together in person.
Yeah.
And I still think it's like one of the best podcasts out there on AI, and it was like a master class by you on AI. And I think what helped me really understand like the true power of AI was the approach you took in explaining it, which was the evolutionary approach. And I want to take the same approach. So for us to understand the sophisticated program that Airbnb built, that anyone can build, by the way.
And now it's becoming easier with AI.
Right. Like for us to understand and appreciate that, I would like to take an evolutionary approach where we'll talk about like how digital was the next step in the evolution from traditional advertising and how AI is the next step in digital advertising. So let's take this evolutionary approach. So one way to understand that is, and the reason why that quote is so famous by Ogilvy is, let's understand how traditional advertising works. So
so before we get into that, in this podcast, you're ultimately going to share how Airbnb built like this very sophisticated money printing machine using digital advertising.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about how today anyone can do that using the power of AI. That's where we're going to get to. But before getting there, we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of marketing and advertising and how we got to this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then to be clear, not only will this be relevant for anyone who is spending money on Google Ads or Meta Ads, which is a lot of money. Like to put this into perspective, just between Google and Meta, advertisers spend roughly $500 billion per year. That is insane. So if you combine all of digital marketing, which by the way, what I'm going to share today applies to.
Yeah.
It's like almost $1 trillion and it's growing quite rapidly, right? If you include TikTok and Amazon and everyone, right? So it's going to be relevant for anyone who's already spending. But I think what we're going to talk about today, or what I'm going to share today, is also important, or it's going to be interesting for any aspirational person who wants to enter the space, who has been in this space. Maybe they want to open their own agency. So hopefully it'll be relevant to everyone. Within the ecosystem.
Sounds good. So what's the first stage in the evolution?
Yeah, so the first thing, think of traditional advertising. What are some types of media that comes to your mind?
When I was a kid, I used to see ads on TV. When I'm driving around, I see ads on billboards, like in newspapers, magazines. This is what I think of in terms of traditional advertising.
Yeah, so you're spot on. So traditional advertising is basically the way it's done, or the way it's bought, is you buy impressions. So that is the currency of traditional advertising. And the way it works
what is an impression?
Yeah, an impression is basically every time someone sees your ad on the newspaper or on the TV or hears your ad on the radio. So it's the exposure to your ad is an impression.
Like a display.
Yeah, a display.
I think actually you jumped ahead one step maybe. Impressions is what happened when it became digital, but pre-digital, like you didn't buy a certain number of billboard views, right? You just bought like billboard space.
So the reason I use the word impression, you're absolutely right. But you can think of it as impressions because the way it worked is, let's say there's a billboard, and the person who's selling the ad on the billboard would tell the advertiser something like, okay, there's roughly this much traffic that's always passing, so we can give you these many impressions.
So it's like a rough approximation.
Yeah, so like think of that as a rough approximation of like what gets bought. And the reason why, well, it works because you know when you get your product in front of people, more people will know about your product, and then eventually they'll come and buy your product, right? So advertising obviously works, but it's just so hard to know how many of the impressions actually went to people, like how many people even saw it.
You don't even know how many impressions you got.
First of all, you don't even know how many impressions you got. You have to take the advertiser's word.
Yeah.
And like how many people ended up seeing it? Like did they actually see it? Like were people watching the ad on TV, or like were they doing something? So it's just,
did the right people see it?
Did the right people see it? So that is kind of why you had this adage, right? Like I know half of my ad spending is wasteful. I just don't know which half.
Yeah. And also you have no idea, like, what impact that had on you. Like, say I'm a hotel chain and I advertise on a billboard or in a magazine. I have no idea, like, what that contributed to my, like, you said Airbnb was able to say this much percentage of their growth came from their advertising spend. Like, back in the day, no one had any idea of anything like that.
I mean, that's such an important thing, is just to, how do you establish the connection between the advertiser that you're doing and the actual bottom line impact on your business? That's still very tricky, but that's the holy grail of all advertising, is to be able to make that connection between advertising spend and bottom line impact.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about like how people actually did that back in the day, even though they didn't have any sophisticated methods to do it. What was the way in which it was done?
So that's a very good question. What the question you're asking is in the field of ad measurement. So like the one way of phrasing the question you're asking is, how did people measure the effectiveness of their advertising in the world of traditional?
Yeah.
Right? So there are many different advertising measurement approaches that you can take. One very sophisticated approach that advertisers developed in the traditional advertising space, it's called MMMs, or marketing mix modeling or media mix modeling. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but one way of the main theory over there is, what you do is, for a long-term horizon, like let's say a year or two, you take the sales of your business. So let's say you're any business, you sell clothes, right? What you do is you take the sales of your business for the last 2 years, month by month. And for the same month by month period, you take all of the ad spendings that has happened on TV, on newspapers, on radio, and you correlate everything together. And what you try and find is, well, it looks like when the ad spend on TV went up during Super Bowl, there was a spike in my sales. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to develop a correlation between your advertising spend and the sales on your business, or the bottom line of your business. So the key takeaway is, the way people measured the effectiveness of their ad campaigns or advertising was through a correlation approach. It's not very important to understand like what the actual approach was, MMMs or this. The most important thing to understand, it was a correlation approach.
And that's as opposed to like a causal approach.
That's a great point. So there's another famous saying in the world of statistics, which is, correlation does not imply causation. Right? So you're absolutely spot on. And we'll talk about what a causal approach might look like, but let's stick to the traditional way. So how is media bought in the traditional advertising model? It's bought on impressions. And how is the effectiveness measured? Is done through a correlation approach. Right?
So, and that's not super accurate, but it gives me some directional sense of what advertising is working and how well it is. So then, in the traditional media approach, what did people actually do to optimize this? So the thing that they were measuring was not super accurate. But what are the ways in which they tried to optimize their advertising?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I'm going to try and, so there's so many things that you have to do when you have to optimize advertising. Actually, it's just becoming more and more complex. There are like 10,000 different things that you have to do, right? So instead of me breaking down like literally each one of those things, let me give you a framework to understand the core work streams that you have to undertake to optimize your advertising. So one of the most important and core work stream is the actual creative of your advertising. So like the ads that you see in traditional advertising, and it still remains very important. Have you ever seen the show Mad Men, or do you know about that show Mad Men? Like those are very important people, right?
The ad agencies.
The actual ad that you will see on print, so on the newspapers and magazines or on TV, those are very, very critical, and that was like one of the most important ways in which people were optimizing their advertising.
So this refers to either the image on the billboard and the text associated, the tagline, or the 30-second video clip I see on a TV commercial.
That's exactly right? So the actual ad.
And that was really important. Like, I still remember there's so many memorable ads from when I was a kid. They still stick with me today. Like, growing up in India, some of the most interesting ads I used to see were like Fevicol. They had these really unique ads, and then there were these ad battles between like Pepsi and Mountain Dew. I remember these, and they were really memorable, and they stuck with. And we used to talk about them. Everyone saw them on TV. I think I remember them very fondly, but I guess like people didn't really know at that time like how effective they were.
So you're exactly right. So the I would say the hope there was, I will make a really good ad. Hopefully people will talk about it, remember it. It will generate a kind of saliency in the consumer's mind, and then they will consider my product when they go to the supermarket because it's going to linger in their mind for a long time, right? But the operative word here is hope.
Right.
You are hoping that your ad would work, and then the customer would buy the product. And that's all. Like, I don't want to go too much into traditional advertising, but I would say those are like the fundamental.
Sorry, you said creative is one?
Yeah, creative is one. And then the other aspect you can think of is targeting, which is where do I want to show my ad? So, like, you have many different newspapers, you have many different magazines, you have, when you buy TV, like, there's so many different types of shows. There are different channels. Like, should I show an ad in ABC or NBC or, like, you know, the big.
And how do people think about that decision?
So it depends on what your demographic is or who your ideal customer is. So let's say you are making something for swimmers, right? Like, you make swimming trunks. Well, you try and find
I never saw ads for swimming trunks, by the way, when I was growing up.
I'm just making this up.
No, but I think this is actually a good point because
you were not in their demographic.
Well, or that like swimming trunks is not like a huge mass market product. It's a more niche product. And when you don't have targeting available to you, you can only brands that are making like mass appeal products can even afford to like advertise.
That's actually a really good point. So traditionally, the big advertisers have always been these CPG or FMCG companies, so consumer products and goods. So think of the Nestle's and like these big companies that make like biscuits, cereals, P&G, right? Because they can just blast advertising on TV and whatnot. So targeting is another very critical component. Or if you make nuanced products, maybe you'll find like a specific type of magazine or specific type of show on TV. But all of those things are the core components that go into traditional marketing.
And there's like localization, I guess. If you're a large global or national brand, you might advertise on national newspapers. But if I'm a company that operates only in a particular city, then I might advertise in the local newspaper of that city. And so maybe at that level, there's some targeting.
So basically, what are the different things that you would have needed to figure out? What is the creative I'm going to show? Where I'm going to target, like who I'm going to target depends on where you're going to target. And what you would end up doing is like, okay, I'm going to buy these many impressions. Like if it's TV, this particular TV show reaches out to X million people. So those are the number of impressions I'll get. And then again, hope being the operative word. You hope that will convert. And there are some ways of measuring it through correlative measures. Okay. So that was true for a large part of the last century.
Like pre-digital.
Pre-digital, right? Let's say up until 2000s. And when digital came about, most people naturally replicated the same model in the digital ecosystem. So how you'd buy billboards in the real world, people started buying banners on early websites. Right?
I remember in the early days of the internet, every time I go to a website, you have like a banner on top that shows different advertisements.
And then again, the hope over there is people will see your banner and they'll go to your business or go to your website or whatever, right? And the metric by which people were selling these ads, it was called CPM. This is kind of a technical metric. What that stands for is cost per 1,000 impressions. The
cost per mil.
Well, M is like a Roman numeral for 1,000, right? So the metric is cost per 1,000 impressions, and that's how people would buy it.
And so I think, so now we've talked about two stages. The first stage is pre-digital era, where what you could buy is like advertising space. Like you could buy a slot on a TV commercial, a slot on a billboard. And the targeting, we talked about that. The key difference now, what happened, is that you can actually pay for a specific number of impressions. Earlier we said that if I buy a billboard ad, I just pay for that ad for a given number of time, and I can guess how many people would see it approximately. But now in digital, if I buy a banner, if I have a blog, let's say, and it's a popular blog or a newspaper, and I sell a banner ad, I can charge for exactly how many impressions it's getting because I know how many people are viewing the website.
So that itself is such a big step up, right? Like such a big revolution is like on TV, if you buy an ad spot, like literally everyone who's watching that show will see the ad. There's no nuance to it.
Yeah.
Whereas when it comes to digital and you're buying impressions, you can like buy a few thousand impressions.
Right.
And everyone who sees an ad might not see the same ad.
Right. They can rotate that.
Yeah, they can rotate that. So that itself is a big revolution there.
Yeah.
But largely what's happening still is we're trying to replicate what happened in traditional into the digital ecosystem.
Right.
So the ads also kind of was like, okay, you have display ads, you have like image ads in print, you will have like digital print ads, right? Or digital video.
So let's say this is the early era of digital advertising, primarily display and banner ads.
Yeah.
And two things changed there. One is the actual like impressions, you could measure them. And secondly, targeting also became a little more sophisticated because not in the traditional era, the billboard, everyone who's driving through that lane sees the exact same thing. But on a banner ad on a website, I can keep changing that based on who's visiting the website. And I don't have to show the same ad to the viewer.
Yeah. So like if we go back to like the analogy that you used when you were explaining the AI episode, let's take the phone analogy. So just by replicating what existed in the traditional space into the digital space, it was already quite good and revolutionary, right? And you can think of it as an evolution from home dial-up phones to having mobile phones, which was such a big step up, right? And it was great. However, it was still not the iPhone moment.
Not the smartphone era.
Yeah, it was not the smartphone era.
What's the iPhone moment of
so let's now,
advertising?
which is why you would have noticed that even though these are such revolutionary things, the ability to like buy a certain number of impressions or like the ability to have more nuanced targeting, I don't seem to be as impressed when I'm talking about that. The reason is what was truly, truly revolutionary in the digital space was when, I would say Google was the one that pioneered it. So what was the problem earlier? Like you were buying impressions and you didn't know how many of them were. And the hope was that people would go to your website and then hopefully more and more people of them will get converted and go to your website.
And you probably didn't know how to target.
Yeah. The most revolutionary thing that Google introduced was we will not charge you for the impression. The impression is completely free. So that, like, think about it, how revolutionary that thing is. Everyone is charging you for impressions. And Google says, we'll not charge you for impression. All impressions are free. We will only charge you when someone actually clicks on your web ad and goes to the website. That is remarkable. Like that birthed a whole industry that was literally called cost per click.
Well, let's actually like take a moment to step back and talk about what it even means to click on an ad. Because when we were talking about ads originally, like banner ads, I can't click on that. If I'm driving or in pre-digital era, there was no concept of clicking on an ad. So you see an ad and then the hope is you go home and then you buy the product or something. In early digital advertising on banner ads, I think initially maybe they were not clickable. They were just like banners. And then at some point, the ads became clickable and you could click the ad and actually go to the website of the advertiser.
So that's a great question. Actually, this might be a good time for us to understand this through a conceptual framework of the marketing funnel.
Okay,
So when you think of billboards or TV ads, you can think of all of these things into a marketing funnel, which is shaped something like this. And the first stage of the funnel, the top stage, is to drive awareness. So when you buy impressions, your goal is to reach as many people as you can and get your product in front of people. And then the hope there is, once your people see it, then they will consider buying your product. So that's the next stage of the marketing funnel. And it's been conceptualized as a funnel is because it's a process of conversion. So you go from awareness by being aware of a product to then consider a product. And then once you consider a product, then you may end up buying a product. So let's say if you make 100 people aware of your product, let's say 20 out of those 100 people might end up considering your product. So what you have done is you've converted 20% of the people into a considered phase. And then let's say out of the 20 people who consider your products, 5 people end up buying your product. So this is called a funnel because it's a process of conversion. So 100 to 20 and then 20 to 5. Right? So in this whole, if you use the same framework for impressions and clicks, when you bought banner ads first digitally, you wouldn't know if they'll go to your website or not. But with clicks, you had a very you had a direct feedback, like a direct response, that someone actually considered your product.
Right.
Because when they're clicking and going to your website, they're signaling that I'm actually considering your product.
Okay.
So what was revolutionary in this case is you were able to like go lower in the funnel, one level lower in the funnel, and actually start optimizing to what you truly desired from your awareness campaign, and only pay for that. So I think what was revolutionary is just the confidence that Google had in the high quality traffic that they were promising to bring to your website.
Right.
They were so confident that will bring high quality, meaning people who are actually consider your product, that you don't pay us for impressions. So it was just like the same thing that Google did with Gmail, right? Like when Google came up with Gmail, everyone else like Hotmail or Yahoo was offering like 2 to 5 MB of email space.
And they offered 1 GB.
And then Gmail came and they offered like, and all of us remember we used to like have to delete.
There was a wait list to get on Gmail.
The reason is it was such a radical and revolutionary idea. Is just you don't have to worry about space at all. Like that's possible. And they just completely changed the game, right? So in a very similar fashion.
This completely changed the game.
In a very similar fashion, this revolutionary idea of like moving one level below the funnel, which no one even thought was possible. And it was revolutionary because like they changed the way the business model even worked. Like all impressions were free. Like things that people were paying for is suddenly free, and you only pay for what you truly care.
But let's bring this funnel to life, actually. What happens, say, like, I don't know, I'm drinking tea, you're drinking some milk over there. If you're advertising a product like this, the top stage of the funnel awareness is like I see on TV an ad for this product, let's say this tea. I see it on TV. The next stage, consideration, actually is completely disconnected from that. That's when I next go into the grocery store. Let's say I'm browsing the tea aisle, and I pick up this box of tea, and I start considering it. I look at the label. I'm like, oh, this looks good. And then the last stage is I actually take it to the checkout and purchase this item. So that's like awareness is me looking at it. Consideration is at the grocery store. Maybe I'm picking it up, looking at it. But in the digital space, there's a more direct connection between those two, because the moment when I become aware of it by seeing the impression, I can immediately click there and consider it. And in some cases, maybe I can even make the purchase like there. So it's like if Google said, hey, instead of paying for all the people that are seeing your ad, I'm going to optimize the number of people that are going to actually pick up your product on the aisle. And you're just paying for that. And of course, like out of all the people that pick up this pack of tea, maybe only a small percentage of them actually go and take it to their cart and check out. But this is huge, right? You're suddenly saying, look, there's a way in which you can directly pay for the number of people that are picking up your product. And
that's such a good analogy. Let me offer another analogy. So let's say you open a new restaurant. And you want to get more customers to your restaurant. No one knows about your restaurant. So what you do in the scheme of traditional advertising is you print out these flyers and you like spread it around your neighborhood in different shops. And the hope is by seeing your flyers, people will come to your shop or to your restaurant. Imagine if then a new advertiser comes to your shop and like, just pay me for the number of people I'll actually bring to your restaurant. I can't promise if they'll end up ordering food, but I promise you I'll get you foot traffic. Isn't that like a remarkably revolution? That's exactly what Google did.
So they moved from a perspective of someone who's selling something, whether it's tea or like restaurant food or whatever. I have these 3 stages to worry about. I have to get people aware of my product, I have to get them to consider it, and I have to get them to buy it. And initially I had this manual process of trying to get a bunch of people aware of it, hoping that some of them would consider. And now the first stage is kind of eliminated to me. I can directly say, look, I just want to get more people who are considering my product.
So that what that does is it improves the overall effectiveness of your advertising program, and it also brings high quality traffic to your website. So by the way, we're kind of omitting and going like not talking about a lot of things that are going in the background, which is like just digital itself was such a big revolution. So you talked about the analogy of like you going to a grocery store and then considering would be picking up the product. So what would be the equivalent of that? That was something that was happening in the background, right?
I think it's
a lot of people were coming up with websites, their own websites, and think of a business's website as their storefront. So clicks to a website is think of it as like foot traffic to the store, right? So what would be the equivalent of you picking up a product and looking at the product label would be like going to the product page on the website.
Absolutely.
So every website which sells product will typically have a product page where you'll have more information, some videos. So people actually going and reading more about the product page is actually going and picking up your product. So now you have the ability to directly pay for that.
And you can, and also I guess another trend we should talk about is just the rise of e-commerce itself.
Right.
Because now there's a way in which you can make the entire transaction online. I can become aware of a product. I can go to the store. And then I can even purchase the product. So that was kind of one of the engines which like drove digital advertising. If commerce did not move online, this wouldn't have worked. But over the last 20 years, obviously we've been seeing commerce is moving completely online more and more. Now, this is an increasing trend. Much more of commerce is going to be moving online.
Right. So that's actually a great segue to the other thing that I wanted to talk about. So let's go back to our frame of the evolution of advertising in general. We talked about traditional advertising, where we talked about two things, right? The problem space of wasteful spending and not having connections. So this kind of revolutionized that in a way. Now you're like buying directly for traffic website. What was the other thing we talked about? We talked about how did people measure the effectiveness of their advertising in the traditional space. And I talked about a correlative approach where like you would look at sales for long term, and then you'll see like how your advertising went up and down on billboards and TV, and you make a correlation. Okay, whenever this goes up, so maybe it has more of an impact. Now with the digital space, like you were mentioning, right? Like sometimes people will see your ad, click on your ad, look at the product page, purchase. And with digital, now you actually had the ability of tracking. Here, the operative word is tracking. This was another revolutionary thing that came with digital, right? Like first is the way of buying, completely revolutionary, turns everything on its head. The next is measurement, completely revolutionary. Because you can track the user's journey, like which ad they saw, which website page they went to, how long they stayed on the page, and then they converted. Because you can track the user's journey, measurement became way more sophisticated. So I talked about how it was called MMMs in the traditional. The technical term for this kind of measurement in the digital ecosystem is called attribution. And that became very, very, very sophisticated because you were able to attribute, like you were able to first figure out the whole user journey from like seeing your ad to like going to the website, and then attribute back exactly who caused the user to move from each stage. So like which ad made them aware, which ad drove traffic to the website, how much time they spent on the website, and then when they converted, who converted more, so like who's a more profitable. So the thing is, you had so many data points to capture, so you can map out the user journey. And then the other thing you have to understand, what was remarkable here, is in the earlier approach, you could only do it at mass scale, right? But now you can do it at a user level. Which is, again, very revolutionary. For every single of your customer, like a digital customer, you can map out like what the different journey they took. So it was very, very nuanced, and this was another revolutionary approach. So we have seen both things evolving. We have seen how measurement evolved from, it's still correlative, by the way. You have to understand. It's still not causal, but it's way more powerful.
Why is this not causal? Because I can see, like in the earlier world, say I had, 3 different billboards at different places in the city, and then someone walked into the store. I don't know if they walked in having seen a billboard or not, and then secondly, I don't know which billboard they saw. But in this case, you can exactly track like which ad someone clicked on that brought them to the store.
Yeah, but it's still correlative. What you can see is they saw this and they bought this. This is classic correlation. What you have is just this happened and this happened. And then the other nuance to understand here is, even though it was more sophisticated, you had the problem of walled gardens. And it's important to understand what that means. Because we understand, so you work for Meta, I work for Google. Because they're large competitors, they don't really play well with each other, and there's not a lot of data sharing between them. So a lot of times what ends up happening is someone will purchase something on your website. Let's say they bought something for $100. Meta will claim that they're the ones who brought this $100 for you, and Google will claim that they brought this $100 for you. So you have the problem of correlation, because these walled gardens don't share data with each other. So all you have to go is with correlations. Is like, okay.
Well, but in this case, we're just talking about the click, right? Not the purchase. So who brought the click to you that you can track exactly, right?
Yeah, but what if the journey was more complex, which tends to be the case, right? Like, what if you saw an ad on Instagram for a company, and then you also saw an ad on YouTube, and then you went and purchased?
Right.
Who gets the credit for that?
Yeah.
Meta would claim that they get 100% of the credit. Google would claim that
There's
they
like
get
first touch versus last touch.
Yeah. So again, I didn't want to get into the weeds, but so digital, way more sophisticated and powerful measurement.
Yeah.
Because you had the whole user's journey, but it brought its own complexity because it was a multi-touch attribution. This is what it's called, multi-touch in the industry.
Yeah.
It's a very, very complex journey. There's not a lot of data sharing. So it's still a correlative approach, still a very, very powerful approach.
So I think the key benefit I'm seeing of this transformation to business owners and people who want to market their products is that in the earlier world, they had to figure out how to do the targeting. They had to figure out, if I show this to this group of people, then they're more likely to click on or consider my product. And so I had to spend a lot of energy thinking about exactly who to target it to. But in this new world where Google is allowing me to pay directly for considerations or for clicks, I don't have to worry about the quality of my targeting as much because I'm just like, hey, Google, send me clicks or send me considerations.
Yeah, I mean, I partly agree with you because the quality of the clicks still matter. Like, you want to make sure, because not all traffic are alike, right? Some traffic is better than others. Some people who come to your website end up buying, some don't, some bounce off the right second. So,
but at least for the first phase, so we talked about the funnel in 2 stages, right? One is awareness to consideration and then consideration to purchase. So I don't have to worry about the first stage anymore. That Google is taking care of.
Exactly.
Me.
So that's why I said I partly agree with you, because earlier, all you had to go by was impressions. You didn't know if they would even go to your website.
Yeah.
But now you actually have the ability to directly only pay for and optimize to people going to your website.
Yeah.
But what does now matter is you want to make sure that you're getting quality traffic.
Right. Because you might be getting 100 clicks, but then none of them are actually buying your product.
So in order to do that, we evolved very complex digital marketing ecosystems, right? Like, you had agencies, and with all of this sophistication, the digital marketing structures also became very, very complex. So there more and more things needed to be done, which birthed the whole industry, like the CPC industry, which birthed so many different agencies. Then Meta came about, which also birthed so many agencies. So right now it's a booming ecosystem of, like I said, almost $1 trillion in annual spending, right? And to manage all of this spending, there's a lot of people who work towards it, right?
Yeah.
So what started happening is, let's talk about the frame that we took. Creatives, digital creative, explosion in that. Measurement, targeting, it was an explosion in that. Now, in the interest of time, I want to show you it became complex and how this happened from the year 2000s to, I would say, 2015 to 2016, which is where AI started blowing up a little, and how AI then changed the game to so you can think of it as traditional to naive digital.
Okay.
And now let's see how AI kind of disrupted this.
Okay. Yeah. So just to recap, traditional was billboards, banners, TV. Yeah. Naive digital was transposing those banners onto the digital websites.
Yeah.
And then the click-based model, that's somewhere in between.
Yeah. Let's understand it like this. Traditional, you had the top stage of the funnel. That's all you had visibility into, and you were hoping that the bottom stages of the funnel will happen. Hope. Yeah. Naive digital, don't worry about it. You don't have to hope. We'll actually directly bring you people who consider your product, right? But then you're still hoping that they will end up purchasing.
Yeah.
What the new, more sophisticated version of digital is don't worry about the top part of the funnel or the middle part of the funnel. We can actually directly optimize toward purchases. So that was the key revolution.
So lower funnel optimization.
Yeah. So what again, Google and Meta realizes, what customers at the end of the day care about with this whole marketing funnel is actual products sold, revenue, growth of the business, right?
I don't care how many people picked up the box of tea.
Yeah.
I just care how many people actually bought it at the end of the day.
So they introduced the ability to directly optimize for that, which in the industry is called conversion. So think of it like this. Think of the 3 parts of funnels as impressions, clicks, conversions. So traditionally, you only had the way of optimizing to impressions.
Right.
Naive digital during the 2000s gave you the ability to optimize towards clicks
Right.
directly, right? You don't have to do anything with impressions.
Yeah.
Now, the more sophisticated digital, which started somewhere in 2016, is you can actually directly optimize towards what you actually want, your end business goal, which is conversions.
Okay.
Right? A conversion would be like a checkout of a product on your website.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, again, revolutionary.
Well, it's actual money coming to you.
Yeah. And the way this was done is you have to understand everything in digital is bought through an auction-based process.
Yeah.
Meaning every time you search something on Google or every time you log into Meta or Instagram, an auction happens. And what that means is Google will do an auction on your behalf. Let's say I go search something on Google. Google will do an auction on my behalf. It's like someone is searching for best swimming trunks.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to show an ad to this person?
Okay.
There are thousands, if not millions of people who want to sell swimming trunks online.
Yeah.
I'm a potential customer for them all. So what they will do is they will participate in an auction and be like, hey, here's my bid. Here's my bid for like winning this auction. And then whoever is I'm most valuable to will like put the highest bid. And there are many other factors that go into it. But let's say all things considered, your bid value is what determines if you win the bid or not.
And this is happening in milliseconds every single time a person can be shown an ad.
Exactly. This is happening at a scale of trillions of auctions every day, hosted by Google and Meta and TikTok combined, right? It's all auctions. So now you had the ability to decide the bid for your auction. By the way, all of this was happening in the naive digital as well, but it was very, very complex. What you had to do is you had to figure out, like people actually literally had to manually figure out how much they wanted to bid for every ad, right? And there were a lot of complicated, sophisticated like tools made to figure all this out. But what AI was able to do is also turn this around on its head and be like, you know what? At the end of the day, you care about the conversion. So let us bid according to that conversion. You tell us what is important to your business, and we will find who the most valuable user is for you, and we will bid accordingly.
And when you say AI, you're talking about AI that's inside companies like Google and Meta, right?
So I think like Google and Meta, they make great AIs. One of the best ways to get access to their most advanced AIs for free is through their ad platforms. I think Google through its ad platform or Meta through its ad platform makes available some of the best commercial AIs for free.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that this is what I do. It's my day job. I work on improving AI for ads at Meta, and you sell this at Google.
Exactly. So I would say we're kind of rushing through it, but what I would say is right now, a sophisticated marketing approach uses AI to solve all of these critical components of an advertising business that we talked about earlier. The creatives, the targeting, and then I introduced something new, which is bidding, which was introduced in the field of digital. So maybe we can spend some time in unpacking how AI has like powered all of these critical components, and then finally, how did we solve the measurement problem in the more sophisticated approach, and how all of that comes together to make like one of the world's greatest, most sophisticated marketing program. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So let's take the example of Google Ads, right?
Yeah.
When Google Ads was introduced, the way you figured out if you should show an ad to someone or not, or if you should bid high or not, is done through something called keywords.
Okay.
Right? What that means is, let's stick with the example of swimming trunks. Let's say you sell swimming trunks which are based on kids' characters, right? And you have a swimming trunk which has Elmo on it, right? Like you want to target people who are swimming. So what are the types of searches that you might be interested in showing up? Any search that has the word Elmo and swimming trunk in it, right? So if someone's searching for Elmo swimming trunks, you really want to show an ad. So the way it worked was targeting worked is you would figure out keywords and then you would tell Google is like, hey, if someone is searching and these keywords are present in their search, then I want to show an ad. Right? This is a manual way of targeting.
Yeah.
How AI solved this is, instead of you telling Google that here are the types of keywords that should be present in the searches I should go after, let AI figure out what are the most relevant searches. Here's what I sell. Google's AI, please figure out what are the most relevant searches.
And here's my budget. You have to specify.
So when I talked about the Airbnb CFO saying that we focused on keyword expansion, what they basically figured out was this traditional digital marketing approach where you had hundreds of thousands, if not millions of keywords that you were targeting. You let AI figure that out.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to go too much into the weeds, but there's a technology called broad match within Google Ads, which is basically AI letting you figure out the targeting. Right? That's just one example.
And actually, I can talk about very similar things at Meta also. So Meta is not based on keywords because Google is search advertising. In Meta, it's not search advertising. You don't see ads in response to a search query. You see ads when you're browsing your feed. You're looking at your friends' photos or people you follow on Instagram, and in the middle of that, or Reels or wherever, you see ads. But the analogy here is, previously, people had to do a lot of targeting manually, where you would say that, look, I want to target people in this demographic segment, with this age range, with these interests, and so on. And that's, again, you as a business owner or marketing expert, you're trying to guess who you think is more likely to purchase your product. But instead now, and this is the work I do at Meta, is we build sophisticated AI models that, based on all the data we have, will predict which user is most likely to click on a given ad and which user is most likely to actually purchase on that ad. So instead of having advertisers manually specify targeting criteria, they can offload that and just say, hey, here's how much a conversion or a click is worth to me. And then the AI will figure out how to get them, who to target to get them their desired result.
Yeah, exactly. So like and the thing that I think was very remarkable for me to understand is how AI was able to do it. And that's something that I understood from our podcast that we recorded, which is fundamentally what machine learning solved was, instead of taking an explicit rule-based approach, which is what manual targeting is, you let the system learn from the goals. So you tell the system what success looks like. In this case, selling a swimming trunk, or like whatever the conversion is, and the system learns from that and figures out who the right audiences are to target. So that's, I think, the core theme here is how AI revolutionized digital advertising. Is instead of you explicitly designing all of these things, you let the AI figure all of these components out. That's true for targeting, and that's also true for creatives. So let's talk about creatives. In the old days, a creative was a static ad, like an ad that you shoot, then you show it on TV. Similar in the world of digital, you enter some text, and then that forms your text ad, or you have a digital image. But in the world of AI, you have the understanding of your business, you have your website. You let the AI construct the ad in real time based on certain assets that you provided. So here's the nuance. Instead of creating a canonical ad, what you do is you provide the AI digital assets, and you let the AI construct a real-time ad customized for every single audience, depending on what behaviors they attribute, which is kind of like a personalized brand experience for every unique user. So that also kind of flips the head on its on how AI is flipping.
So I don't have to create one image to sell or one message to sell my product. I can create personalized images and text for each individual.
Right. So what's happening is now ads are being personalized at the scale of millions and billions. Everyone will see their own ads. And what's important here is having assets. So what you're providing now is not canonical ads, but assets to the AI, which then uses it as building blocks of the ads. And I think with Gen AI going, maybe you don't even need to provide the assets anymore. It will know what your website is, what products you're selling, and it will generate the full ad by itself. But you see where the evolution is happening, right? So we saw the evolution in targeting. We saw how AI is revolutionizing even creatives. Now let's talk about bidding. In the early days of naive digital, the way you were bidding is you were treating all traffic, all clicks alike, right? So you were like, okay, if someone's searching for something, and if let's say 100 people search for that thing, I'm going to pay the same for all those 100 people. But now, with you having the ability to provide a goal to the AI, you can actually tell the AI that, well, let's say 100 people search for Elmo swimming trunks. But it's possible that a few of those people will end up buying the most expensive Elmo swimming trunks, hence they'll be most profitable to my business. So I'm actually happy to pay a little bit more for them. AI now has the ability to have that incredible nuance and make those nuanced decisions based on how profitable a particular search will be for your business. And even the bidding has been revolutionized. So the goal that you choose for the AI now becomes the most critical component of your digital marketing program. So a lot of people had to figure out what the right goal should be. And I honestly believe the most advanced, the best goal that you can give to the AI is actually profit, or more technically speaking, contribution margin. Because now AI has the ability to optimize towards any goal for your business.
Yeah.
Now let's work through it. Like, what do you think is the right goal for this advertising AI? And here are the options on things that you can optimize for the different metrics. Impressions.
Yeah.
Clicks. Conversions, in the other words, like purchase.
Yeah.
Revenue.
Yeah.
Or profit.
Right.
At the end of the day, like your business, the main objective is to drive growth,
Profit.
but profitably, right? Like drive bottom line impact. And now that you have the ability to choose any goal for your business, why not choose the main goal that your business desires, which is profit?
So this evolution basically has been getting closer and closer to the end objective. So as a business owner, I care about generating profit. But in the earlier eras of AI, I had to guess at how much profit I could get based on ways in which I'm optimizing impressions. And then we got one level closer to that by optimizing for clicks. We got one level closer to that by optimizing for conversions. But now AI is powerful enough that I can just literally tell the AI that, look, this is how this transaction impacts my profit. I would have to let it know, like, what exactly for each product, like if someone buys it, how much profit does that generate for me? And then the AI under the hood of like Google, Meta, and these types of companies will just optimize for my bottom line.
Yeah, so I think we've talked a lot about theory, and I think we've painted a picture on how that's evolving.
Yeah.
Now let's transition to, maybe we can end with just making it very concrete. Let's try and understand, what does it mean to build the world's most sophisticated digital marketing program in 2024? Like, what does the state of the art look like in 2024?
Using all the power of the AI and everything we've described.
Hopefully what we have done so far is given our audiences some intuition on how like advertising in general has evolved over the time. But I think the takeaway that I want to give people is, what does that mean to like run the best possible Google ads or Meta ads or TikTok ads program right now? If you're a CEO, a CMO, a CFO of a company that is spending millions of dollars on these platforms, or if you're an agency person who is managing this spend, or if you're anyone who's curious about how this massive industry that amounts for like almost $1 trillion in spending in $1 billion is working, this is the state of the art. Let's take the example of like a clothing retailer, right? Like this is a typical example. It would work for any e-commerce providers. To keep it very simple, let's say you're a clothing merchant that sells clothes online.
Okay.
If you can ensure these 3 things for your digital advertising program, then you would have built the world's most sophisticated digital advertising program. What are those 3 things? The ability for you to track and measure the profitability for each product that you sell.
Okay.
It's very important to understand. So let's say you're a clothing retailer and you make shirts, you make pants, you make jackets, and each one of these you make like thousands of varieties. So you have like thousands of shirts, thousands of pants, thousands of jackets.
Yeah.
Each one of these products, or what's technically called an SKU, has different levels of profitability to your business. Because they have different cost, which is like in finance term cost of goods sold. They have different shipping costs,
logistics,
different logistics, right? Like maybe you have, let's say you sell Marvel shirts, then you may have to pay some licensing fee to Disney. So there are all these different types of costs associated to it. So if you can figure out, and it's also possible that a $100 shirt gives you $20 in profit, but another $100 shirt gives you $40 in profit.
Yeah.
So it's very important for you to understand how much is every product contributing to the overall bottom line of your business.
Sure.
In technical terms, this financial metric is called contribution margin.
Okay.
So the most critical thing, the first step, is for you to understand the contribution margin for each of the products that you sell.
Okay.
Once you have that, The other thing that we understood in our conversations is now all of the big platforms like Google, Meta, using AI, they're heading in a direction where you can buy advertising based on goals. Like you can, in Google, we have this internal adage, we say your goals are your controls.
Okay.
Meaning you can choose to use some of the best commercial implementations of AI, which is Google Ads, Meta Ads, and you can literally tell these AI, here's my goal, here's what I want to optimize for. Now take all of my digital marketing investment and give me more of that.
Yeah.
There are many different types of goals you can choose. We talked about, you can choose the goal of maximizing your impressions, maximizing your clicks, maximizing the orders on your website, maximizing the revenue. What we have determined is that the best goal you can optimize for is actually maximizing profit or maximizing this contribution margin.
Okay.
So for example, you have 1,000 jackets, 1,000 pants, 1,000 shirts, each with different variable contribution margin.
Yeah.
You basically tell the AI, it's like, look, here's the marketing investment, maximize the contribution margin for me. So what the AI will do is understand, okay, this shirt is way more profitable. So let me first invest my money to sell as many of these shirts as I can, and then go down the order of profitability. What that does is it takes your overall investment and maximizes the profit that you can get from that investment.
Okay.
So what you've done is you've turned advertising from a cost center to a profit center. Like you actually just turned your marketing into a money printing machine, right? So what are the two components that we talked about? The first, you can't do the second without the first, which is first you must have visibility into what is the contribution margin of the different products you sell on your website.
And then optimize set that as your goal.
Yeah. And then there's a technical consideration that for you to set that as a goal in these platforms, you must have the technical ability to pass that information back to these platforms.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a technical involved. So it's not the easiest, but if you can figure out a way to do that, and there's so many ways to figure out how to do that, technically these things are called conversion tracking.
Yeah.
So you must figure out a way to measure the profit and then pass back this profit as a goal to the advertising pro.
And this goal that you're talking about is what's commonly known as ROAS, or return on ad spend, right?
Yeah, so the return on ad spend is an optimization metric. In this case, what I'm proposing is that thing that should be optimized for the return should be contribution margin. So one way of you can think of it is this ROAS, return on ad spend, should be thought of as MOAS, which is margin on ad spend, or POAS, profit on ad spend. Right?
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
By the way, I'm glad you brought up ROAS. Most people thought that ROAS was the most sophisticated way of optimizing your digital ads, which is true for the most part. But what I'm saying is there is actually an even more sophisticated way of optimizing it.
Well, it's a version of ROAS. You're just saying
it's a version of ROAS. When you say ROAS,
yeah,
most people will consider R as revenue.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
and that's where they stop, because it's easy.
Yeah.
To get the revenue for a product sold, it's easy. It's a cost price, right? Like that's available in your Shopify. That's very easily available.
In some cases, that might be the same, actually.
True,
Suppose I sell only a few products, and in all the products, the profit is just directly a percentage of revenue.
Yeah, there's like this pizza one. Like maybe there's a company that makes one pizza one. In that case, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But if you have a bunch of SKUs with various different profit margins, then it makes sense to optimize.
Which is where you need to build a more sophisticated system, right? Like let's take the case of Airbnb. Airbnb, for them, what is a SKU? It's a Airbnb home listing. Yeah. And they had 6 million listing across 100 different countries.
And it's not even a listing. It's a listing combined with number of nights or
exactly,
something like
exactly.
that.
So for them, the contribution margin or the profit depended on the type of listing, right? So they have like different variability in profit margins depending on listing. So most businesses are complex like that.
Yeah.
But it's a very good point you mentioned. If you have a very simple product portfolio, like a few products, or if you have a product portfolio where the margin percentage is roughly the same,
constant.
You don't need to figure all this
revenue
out.
is fine.
But if that's not the case, which is the case for most advertisers, let me repeat this. 2 most important steps. The first thing, you must measure the profitability for each product.
Yeah.
And you must then figure out a way
to send that information.
To pass that information back into these ad platforms.
Yeah. And the magic of what you're saying is that like all the 1,000 other things that people traditionally were worried about, which is what's the right targeting criteria, what's the right bidding strategy, all that you're saying can now be handled in an optimal way by the AI systems.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So because I've worked in this space for almost 10 years, I know where the tech is headed, where the tech is already here. So to give you a concrete example, Meta has a product called Advantage Plus, and Google has a product called Performance Max. These are revolutionary products, and they're fundamentally built grounds up with AI at its core. And it's very different from Meta or Google's earlier products, because it kind of flips the head on how the earlier products were designed. Earlier, you had manual ways of customizing, targeting, bidding, and creatives, right? What these new products are doing, they're revolutionary because they're taking away all of those tasks from the advertiser and letting the AI do all of those things. Bidding, targeting, creatives, all they need as an input is a goal. So these products, and that's where the tech is heading. I'm also making a claim here, I could be wrong about this, but I think in 2 to 5 years, these will predominantly be how digital advertising runs. Every large platform, Google ads, Meta ads, TikTok ads, will have one version of this product. So like Meta has Advantage Plus, Google has Performance Max, TikTok will have something. It will be one single AI-based campaign type, which will be goal-driven, and the advertiser can choose whichever goal that they can provide, and the AI will optimize everything. Like that's truly revolutionary.
So what's the takeaway for advertisers now?
What they must spend most of their time on is designing the perfect goal.
Okay.
Because your goals are your controls.
But you already suggested what the right goal is.
Yes, and what I'm suggesting is that perfect goal
Yeah.
is called contribution margin.
Right.
And this metric, we can spend endless amount of time on it. It's basically your revenue minus your variable costs. So it gets rid of all the noise of fixed costs. And think of it as a window into the soul of your business. It's a very profound metric. I love it. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite financial metric. It's truly a gauge into the profitability of your business. And if there is one thing I've learned in my career over the last 5 years, during the COVID and the post-COVID area, is profit is king. Is the companies that had marketing models or advertising practices which were not very sustainable or were unprofitable actually did not weather the storm where the Fed increased the interest rates and the companies struggled or went out of business. The companies which survived are the companies which had sustainable marketing practices,
right.
or in other words,
profit focused.
Yeah, they were focused on profitability, right? So, I mean, and there are so many other reasons why profit is, like, it's, at this point, I don't even think I need to make a big case for why profit is a really desired metric, but it's kind of intuitive, right? Like, profit helps your business grow. So, like, why for the last 200 years, in the capitalistic world, like we've been so profit focused, and that's been the biggest gauge of a business's health, because profit is amazing.
I think this capability is new though, and people are not generally aware of it and perhaps don't like trust it as much. Like that, because previously it was so many knobs and dials that you had to tune to get to your profit, and now these ad platforms have handed over those knobs and dials to their AIs, which are extremely sophisticated, and simplifying it for business owners and marketers and saying that, look, just specify your profit, pass that information back, and our AI will optimize for that. So probably
it's a radical shift in the way ads are run. Actually, that's a really good point. One of the main jobs that I have as an AI sales executive is also to manage this change. It's not an easy change. What you're doing is you're taking away control from people whose jobs it was to like figure out targeting, figure out creatives. And now what we're saying is, like, let's use the same words you use, these knobs and dials, that it was people's jobs to like figure out these knobs and dials. And now we're saying, let the AI do it.
This is like a self-driving car of digital advertising.
I love it.
It's like I don't have a gear, I don't have even an accelerator, I just enter the destination. When I get into the self-driving car, it takes me to the destination. I don't need to worry about like anything else. So goal is destination here. You enter your goal, you share that info, and that's how you can optimize it. Wow.
So what I'm saying is that goal should be profit. You can choose to be another one.
There might be business reasons. In some cases, you're like, hey, I'm really focused on growth right now and like not like profit, but I just want to
actually that's a good
grow
point.
Revenue.
And I've had a long discussion with some of my colleagues on it. Even in those instances, so I want to draw a very slight nuance here. There is profitable and there is being profit driven.
Yeah.
Which is kind of similar but different things. So ultimately, you should run a profitable marketing program or a profitable advertising program. And the way that's defined is you must ensure that for every dollar invested, you must get back more than $1 back in profit. That is amazing, right? What you would have done is hacked Google ads and Meta ads to actually bring organic-like traffic through their advertising programs. So basically, you hacked Google ads and Meta ads to use their advanced AI for free and bring organic growth for your business using their ad platforms, right? Because their ad AIs are so powerful. Now, to your point, not everyone is in a privileged position in their business journey to be able to drive profitable growth. Or you may have a business reason to be okay by not being profitable but want to grow, and you're fine with like letting go of profit. In that case, I would still say it's better to be profit driven.
But your return can be less than 1.
Yes, maybe. Exactly. Okay, so let's recap. I said that there are 3 essential ingredients to building a world-class digital marketing program. We talked about 2 of those essential ingredients. I'm repeating this too many times, but it bears repeating. It's so important. First, figure out a way to measure the profitability of all the products that you sell online. Then, figure out a way to pass back this information as a goal to the advertising platforms. If you have these 2 essential ingredients, you've already built a very sophisticated program, because you built essentially a profit-making machine, right? Like you can make money online, like basically print money online. You have transformed your advertising program into a true profit center. One thing that we talked about in the evolution of advertising is the problem of measurement. Let's go back to the same quote from Ogilvy, right? Half of my advertising spending is wasteful, I just don't know which half. And we saw the evolution of measurement approaches there. It was a very broad-based correlative approach where you projected spend on TV, radio, newspapers on a long-term scale and saw the correlation between spikes in spend to spikes in sale. And you were like, okay, more TV, more sales, meaning better. But it was just correlative, and you just had a kind of an idea that doing more of this helps, but not very precise. Then with digital, you got very precise, right? Like you actually could map out all the user journeys. But the problem is, we've talked about this before, Apple has introduced a lot of privacy laws. This understanding of the journey is breaking, right? And you won't have a perfect picture. And it's also correlative still. Correlation does not imply causation. The holy grail is causation. Can you prove scientifically that X caused Y? Meaning, I invested $3 million in Google Ads, and that investment caused X million dollars in profit. That is the holy grail. And we figured out a way to do that. And I mean, when I say we, by the way, everything I've said so far, I don't want it to come across as like I was the guy who figured all this out. I was just in an incredibly, I'm incredibly grateful to have been in this privileged position where I got to work with incredibly smart people, both on the Airbnb side and Google side, who figured it out. And I was merely just in awe of them, and I learned from them, right?
And now you're helping other people figure it out.
Right? So like, so that I want that to be very clear. But what Airbnb and Google we figured out together is that approach is called incrementality. And what incrementality is basically is a way of asking a question. And the question is this: I spent $10 million on Google Ads last year. Had I not spent that money, how much of my profit would not have happened? The phrasing of this question is very important, because this phrasing is called counterfactual thinking. Meaning, when you ask what would have happened had something not happened. And this type of questioning, a lot of scientists believe, is what got humans away from chimps. And what like led to our flourishing is because we have this we are the only species which has this counterfactual way of thinking. Is we can dream of worlds that don't exist, and this lets us do causal reasoning. Is because this is the most fundamental thing you can do in order to establish a cause and effect relationship. Is if you remove something, will the effect also get removed? And the way to do it in the context of advertising is called incrementality testing. And what incrementality testing lets you do is measure the true causal impact of your digital advertising campaigns to your bottom line. So very conclusively, you can actually scientifically figure out exactly how much profit Google was responsible for, Meta was responsible for, and TikTok. So one problem that exists today, and I think I call it the epistemic crisis in digital marketing, that all CMOs CFOs are facing is this. You will run a lot of Google ads and Facebook ads. Let's say you got $100 million in revenue. Google will say they drove 60 million of this 100 million. Facebook will say they drove 60 million out of this 100 million. And you are left wondering, my whole business was 100 million. He's saying 60, he's saying 60, 120 million. What nonsense is going on? This is the problem of attribution, right? Because they are both claiming. So how do I truly know? With incrementality, you can scientifically prove that Google actually only drove 30 million. They're claiming 60, but truly they drove 30. Meaning if I didn't spend any money on Google, 30 would not have happened. 30 still would have happened.
And how do you measure that?
So I don't want to go too much into the weeds, but there are some scientific experiments that you can take in the same methodology of how drugs are actually passed. They're called randomized control trials. So what you do are these experiments. The most scientifically robust one is called a geo experiment. And roughly speaking, what you do is, let's say you do ads all across the country. You divide the country into two cohorts which are randomized, but the cohorts kind of attribute similar behavior. So like you'll divide up the country, not like by like drawing a line on the geography, but like random set. Yeah. In half of the country, you will turn off your ads. In half the countries, everything is going as usual. And what you'll do is you'll turn off one of your ads, like either Google ads or Facebook ads. Now let's say in the part of the country where you turned off ads, you notice your revenue and profit went down a little bit. So you find out how much it went down by. And then in the rest half of the country, you compare that to the rest half of the country, and then you can truly find out, okay, like actually this is the part.
There's like the test versus control.
And that one serves as the control. So that lets you do. And then there are many sophisticated ways of doing it. Airbnb had to hire an army of data scientists, PhDs from the leading institutions in the world. It's a very scientifically robust way of doing it. But net, this is how it works.
So this is how you measure the return on ad spend. You don't just take at face value the return that the ad platform is reporting to you. You do this test and you say, okay, I got this much return, I spent this much, and that's how you evaluate whether you're running a profitable ad campaign or not.
I love the phrasing you use. You don't take it at face value. Earlier also I mentioned a lot of it was hope-based. You were hoping that something would happen, or faith-based. Now with incrementality, it's not faith-based. It's scientifically proven. I keep using the word science because it's a very scientifically robust methodology that you apply. There's like statistical significance involved. And you can determine, to go back to my old example, if you had $100 million in revenue, you can scientifically prove that Google U actually drove 30, Meta U only drove 20, and 50 would have happened anyways. Because there's some business credibility you have that naturally business would have happened. So now you have a perfect picture. $50 million of my business would have happened without any advertising. The rest 50, Google, Meta, TikTok, this is how much you're responsible.
And that can inform your future spending
Exactly.
decisions.
And that informs your future budget allocation. So now to bring everything together, if you had these three essential ingredients, you would have built the world's most sophisticated marketing program. This applies to most of the $1 trillion in spending that happens on digital ads. First, figure out the profitability of your business. Second, figure out a way to share that information with the digital ad platform as goals. Third, figure out a way to establish the true causal impact on said profitability by these platforms, and then allocate budget accordingly. Once you have this, what you would have built is this AI genie that prints money for you. Think of it as a genie where you give it a dollar bill and it gives you $2 paid back. And then you just keep playing that game until you tire out, basically.
So this is the self-driving car era of digital advertising, and the destination it's taking you to is profit, basically.
It's like it's the holy grail is how do you grow profitably? Because you can grow unprofitably, but that you're going to go bankrupt or you're going to suffer. It's not a sustainable business practice. And this is how you do it. You said it's a self-driving of digital advertising. I like that framing. One way I like thinking about it is it's like a betterment or wealth front of advertising. Like you, instead of thinking of advertising as a cost center,
Yeah.
you turn it into a profit center where it's not advertising costs, it's advertising investment, and your investment actually grows money.
Returns, yeah.
So yeah, this is my
Cool.
job, dude. So this is what I do, day in day out. I have this similar conversation where like I will talk to these C-levels, and you have to understand these C-level executives are incredibly busy. Like these people are responsible for running 9-figure companies. What that means is they have revenues up to like hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're some of the busiest people on earth. So when I get 30 minutes or an hour with them, I have to make sure I bring them a lot of value. And basically, I genuinely and authentically try to share my experience with them, which is that I was in a very incredibly privileged position to have witnessed the building of a very sophisticated marketing program at Airbnb. And I've learned a great deal from that. And I'm very passionate about building a world-class marketing program for them. And I share my learnings, and so far it's been going well. I've been enjoying my new role, and I'm like really passionate about doing this in the future as well. Like I love doing this.
That's awesome. Well, it was great to see how AI is automating and driving value in the digital advertising space. I have tons of follow-up questions, but I'll save them for another episode. People listening, if you have any questions, you want to learn more about AI in digital advertising or anything else, please leave us a comment, send us a message. All right. Well, thanks everyone. See you next time.